Welcome to the Full Tilt Tech Industry Leadership Talks. I'm Mike Pehel, one half of the full crew. I'm stepping in for Dawn today because she's at EDRC, which is the Energy, Drone, and Robotics conference that's going on in Texas right now. I'm actually being joined today by a guest who's hosting another conference in Texas for drones, Ramon Roche, who's the general manager of the Dronecode Foundation. I've known Ramon for years. He's certainly a leader in his community, and we're going to talk about leadership in non-traditional structures, specifically with a focus on open source. So, Ramon, tell us a little bit about yourself, just kind of a general overview of who you are and what you do at the Dronecode Foundation.
Hi, Mike. Thank you for your time today and for letting me be on your stream. Hi, this is Dawn. Hope she's seeing us. Apparently Texas is great, and everyone is posting events here this month, so we must be doing something right. About me and Dronecode Foundation. So I am the GM, as Mike already mentioned, and my duties are essentially leading an open source community and interfacing with creators and partners for that community, and also with the companies that are implementing and adopting open source, and making sure that apps are online, the open source. One is random people online. And while they might be anonymous sometimes or pseudo-anonymous, they are got real jobs and they're real people, and just like you and me, and they do exist. So we try to work with them and making sure that whatever plans or agendas they have are put into motion properly, and that the companies that are adopting and also contributing, they have their own plans and agendas. They're also interface with the overall global community plans and deconflicting any issues that might come, and overall making big progress on creating new technologies. The way we do that is through work groups. We form work groups to tackle problems that a community might be having. Example, flag control for the Pixel work. And a few companies get together, we set a goal, and we have a very short period of time where we try to outline the best way possible to solve that in a way that it actually solves everyone's problems. And we hopefully are doing a great job with that, and the community can tell us. Actually, this week, we're going to be celebrating a lot of that. We're going to get a few work group announcements. We're going to get a few Pixel releases, and we're going to have a lot of good talks under PX4 Developer Summit that is hosted in 2 days from now, in Thursday, 23rd. By the way, if you want to join us virtually, you can still do that. $20 ticket, and you got access to more than 40 sessions, and about Windsurf. I think that's a good intro for now, before I don't give anything away. I know we have an agenda.
Yeah, so just a quick public service announcement. Since Ramon is remote, we are battling with hotel Wi-Fi. So you also might hear me kind of re-summarize what he just said. I'm pretty much aware of anything he's going to be talking about. Just to kind of re-summarize a little bit about the upcoming PX4 Developer Summit. It's 40 plus sessions over the course of 2 days, amazing networking, plus a drone light show with 300 drones, which is going to be brought to us by Uvify. I hope that people were able to grasp the scope of what you were talking about managing an international team at this level of people who are not just focused on your project specifically. So it's not like it's an international team that is this under one business. It's an international team that's donating time to the base level code that basically supports all these businesses in the ecosystem. That's quite a large role. but you have pretty humble beginnings. Can you talk about your early life and where you were born and how you kind of started getting interested in tech at an early age?
Yeah, sure thing. So, uh, um, I live in Tijuana, Mexico. Our community is global, and everyone works remote to us. We don't have the. I am based in Tijuana, and I've been living in Tijuana for the last, I don't know, 30 years probably. I am from Baja. I'm from Mexico, and I got started in tech really early. I think my first computer was, I don't know, like a Pentium something, maybe one, and I don't remember really the specs for that, but it was way before all those fancy video cards with the Voodoo graphics. I'm sure you remember those, Mike.
Yeah, great box art
And
that you would never see in the games.
yeah, great box art. And I learned to program on one of those. I think it was something Visual Basic. And it was basically my mom's job, and they had this custom software. She worked at a gas station, and they were controlling gas pumps, and they had the IDE on one of those computers because apparently whenever they needed to service that system, through there and build there. But they let me play with that whenever I was not in school or doing homework, and that's how I started by messing around with someone else's system. And I remember like moving through the UI and clicking stuff and not really knowing what I was doing, but eventually like building stuff. And this was pre middle school or at middle school. And when um, it was time for me to like choose what I wanted to do and go to university, I had a pretty clear goal what I wanted to do. Um, I wanted to be in tech in a role that allowed me to pursue my video games. And I chose a career that was local to me in Tijuana at one of the best universities in Northwest Mexico. It's called CETIS. And I chose, in, let me translate the career name because it's a long one. It's non-traditional. It's called Graphic Design Engineering, Digital Graphic Design Engineering. And
Oh, so
it's
it's
a
like
mix
technical
of graphic
artist.
design. Yeah, exactly. It's like essentially the program is technical artist, and it's a mix of graphic design. It's just 3D graphics, programming, web, and everything that you would expect out of an engineering career. And I learned how to solder. I learned how to do CAD drawings. I learned how to do 3D modeling. And the one thing I did not learn is how to program. I did have programming classes, but I didn't have really good teachers, to be honest. And I got bored out of in those classes. But funnily enough, and sorry if my school is listening to this, I was probably making a few dollars by selling homeworks to some of my classmates.
I didn't hear it. This isn't
Yep.
broadcast live or anything.
No, not at all. It's not like it's going to be hosted in YouTube.
Yeah, so I mean that so you're already in school. There's some like you're like dancing on the edge of a more technical career, but it seems that you're leaning more towards creative. I could identify with that. I was mostly like I knew how to build websites and I could do it and I compose things in software, but for whatever reason, whenever I took a more technical class, I think to your point, a lot of the teachers, especially if you're not going to a school specifically for that, um, there's nothing they can't carry the material, and also it's not the easiest thing to teach. I mean, you can, but
Yep.
like for somebody to truly love enough to invest time in it, it seems like that has to almost be done on their own. Um, for most of the people I've met, right? Um, it's like schooling only provides them
Yeah,
guidance in
I
it.
Definitely. Like the traditional schools, and I'm not telling like saying that every school is like this. Ones that I've had experience with, and the ones that I've seen my friends being at and colleagues, they almost all have the same experience where it's still using the traditional way of teaching applied to modern topics, and it doesn't really fit well. So that's why you start seeing lots of new learning platforms taking over right now, especially in tech, like learn how to program, get a boot camp in topics from web, because like that's the most common, but all the way to like embedded IoT and cloud. And there's a lot of online schools now, and they might not give you the degree, but you get everything that you need to actually start a career. And one of the things that we're trying to do at Dronecode Foundation, and it's basically because of my past experience, is to put together a learning course on how to get started with PX4, get started with some of the open source technologies that we're creating. But it's tough. It's tough because it's not an easy thing to put into paper. And enough school, I regretted my decision to go creative for the first 2 years because it was the same classes that, let's say, computer science or electrical engineers were taking. So it's essentially doing the same thing and not getting any of the benefit that I wanted out of the career. And I wanted to move to the other career, but I actually never did, because by the time I was going to, the good classes started coming in, like motion graphics and 3D modeling, and those really kept my math. Really good teacher for 3D modeling. Victor Fili, I don't know if you're help with the diversity of things that we could do. And if I could go back in time and get back to school, I'd probably do like electrical engineering or computer science maybe. But I don't regret taking my decision, to be honest, because at the end of the day, I think I got a robust tool set out of that school and like connections. One thing that it's like most of the times when I hear people talking about school, some things that they don't mention is like the connections that network you build when you're going to school, and the importance of choosing the right school and later in life. And thanks to that school, I met some of my best friends in life, which they connected me with some of the jobs that I got later. And one of those jobs that I got connected to was through robotics. And that's how my drone career started.
All right, but we don't want to jump ahead too far, because there's this middle ground where you went into marketing, so basically my field, and how do you end up?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, like, so you have some technical knowledge, but that doesn't necessarily translate to marketing technical knowledge. It seems like you have to make a bit of a leap there, or just invest new time learning while on the job. So what were your next steps in your career, or your first steps?
So actually, I was at a private school. My university was a private school, and it was not cheap. So the way I was financing all that was actually by building websites on the side and building Flash websites, building Flash apps, building just HTML-based apps.
Flash.
I was one of the
Oh,
and,
we're losing you a little bit. Sorry.
and
All right, pop back in. I think you got it.
saying that I did a lot of PHP, WordPress, Joomla, Drupal, all of those things while I was in school to pay for school. So when I left school, I was at another job, and I got a good offer to work at a marketing agency in San Diego. And we did digital marketing. And the reason I got the job was basically because I already knew all the tools, like the skills that they were looking for in building websites. And back then, and it's probably mostly true right now, but what I've seen, like digital marketing was basically installing WordPress and putting like a fancy team on it and customizing a few things and maybe building an app. So I had the right skill set because I knew how to program and I've been doing that already. So it wasn't really what I wanted to do, but it paid bills and I wasn't unhappy per se. And I think I was taking it more like a in life. And to be honest, in the days, I really didn't define what I wanted to do and like apply some rigor into it and like pursue it hardly. I was mostly trying to uh, pay my finance for school, get through life, pay bills. But funnily enough, that marketing agency got bought by a bigger agency in Chicago. So I just got married to my wife and we got moved to Chicago. We spent there like, I don't know, like 6 months. Um, and I was doing digital marketing for big pharma companies. And I was doing websites and stuff and apps and custom apps for them in the back end. And that is when I really felt like, okay, I'm making more money, but now I start to feel like this is not 100% for me, you know? I do want something else because now that it was more professionalized in some sense, it was a choice. I had to move to a different city. I was doing a lot of things that I really didn't enjoy 100%. But I mean, I just got married and I was like, I'm just gonna keep doing this, see where it takes me. Maybe there's a career path in this agency. It was a way bigger group. I don't know, like around 300, 400 people. Had built a few floors of a building downtown Chicago, and it was a beautiful location. So I was happy. But then I moved back to Tijuana for some personal issues we had, and a friend of mine had another marketing agency, book sale, and I moved to work with him as a partner for that agency, and I was director of technology. And in there, I stopped doing a lot of those websites that I really like doing, and we started focusing on more of like offering platforms for big local companies. So we had this local TV station that was on cable only. We helped them switch to digital on YouTube, and they had their own streaming platform. We had to teach all the reporters how to like create digital content and focus maybe between that I can do. But then through some friends from school, I got introduced to Jordi Munoz, the founder of 3D Robotics. So that's when I transitioned to 3D art, where I wasn't really building anything on drones at the beginning. I was actually working on the online store. The online store.
So
and that
really front end.
To,
That's interesting.
yep. Yep. I mean, I was building everything from back end to front end. The main problem they were trying to solve is the website was hosted in one of those pay-as-you-go services where they take a cut out of each sale, and it was a big percentage. So they wanted to move to their own store and cut prices down because when I joined, it was early enough that I got to like witness everything, but they were already selling a lot monthly, so they wanted to cut some of those costs
So you
down.
had to hook into like payment APIs, like
Yeah,
Stripe,
yeah, yeah,
Square,
yeah.
whatever.
So
So you are
I did all of
you're
that.
taking just the transaction fee rather than the hosting fee of a
Exactly.
Shopify or something like that.
Yeah, this is something I don't really talk about in the open. Nobody asked me about this, and I built together with Ramon Garcia, who hired me to work with him and his team for the store. We were doing Ruby on Rails, and we were building the payment system, the shipment system, which was even more robust than the payment system and more of a nightmare
Yeah, I
than
could
you would
imagine.
think, because 3R sold drones, yeah, like ready-to-fly drones, but they also sold parts like nuts and bolts and cables, and everything had to have a weight assigned to it. And whenever you sold like a kit, it's not like we measured the kit and we sold as that. No, on the back end of the store, the line items were actually all those butts and nuts and nuts, and they actually had a weight to them. So you had to sum all the weight, and then you had to check if there's any export control issues to whatever you're going to ship it to. And now you have to like calculate rates. You have to get the shipping label, get the order to the shipping team, and it was a really, really hard thing to do. I did never imagine it was that complicated. So I got a massive respect to everyone that does that for a living, and all the shipping teams out there, RMAs and all that stuff. It's just so complicated. But I met Chris Anderson while working on the store and the 3DR, because like back then 3R was not more than 100 people, and everyone knew each other. So one of the engineering leads in Berkeley came down to San Diego for a meeting, and I think we had dinner or something. We got along, and we just started talking, and I was explaining what I was doing, and he showed me a website that he built where drones were on a map based on like real telemetry. So he was broadcasting telemetry to a website, and you would see where drones were live connected on the map. And this, I'm talking about like a year after I joined 3DR, so this was like 9 years ago. And if you think about it, that's basically a prototype for a lot of the services that you see out there right now, like a website with the live telemetry of a drone. And I started working with him on the side on that project. So I still did my store duties, and on the side when I came back home, I did that. And that turned out to be a service called DroneShare. DroneShare is a great service that got started out of that, and later came to the libraries that we worked on together. We called them DroneKit, and it came to be like a open source library for Python, Android, and what else? I think Objective-C and C++. We created a lot of different libraries for those, and that's when I got started with open source, like fully. I got exposed to that when I started working at 3DR because it was a big part of the culture, because we were huge supporters of Autopilot and the whole open source community and PXOC, but no, I didn't interact with any of that on my day-to-day. So yeah, I don't want to go too much into the weeds here. To stop me if I'm too much detail.
But I think but that's the step right before joining the Dronecode Foundation. So, and that too, I'm sure, metastasized from connections you made while you were at 3DR, working in the drone industry more broadly. But how do you make this shift? Was 3DR committed to open source? I know the answer to that, but I kind of want to hear it from you.
They were deeply committed to open source all the way towards the end. They were going above and beyond to sustain the open source community. They loved so much the things that we were working on with this DroneShare project that they moved me out of the store team and they offered me a position in engineering. And I was the engineering lead for a team, and all of those developers were open source developers, and they were working distributed across the globe. Only one of them was in Berkeley. I got Peter Barker in Australia, Hamish Willie in Australia, and I'm probably forgetting 2 or more people, and I'm sorry if you're watching this. So I was leading a team in there for open source developers working on open source tools. And then by the time 3DR was winding down, they didn't want to let any of the open source tools die, so they moved everything that I was working on to Dronecode Foundation. And Dronecode Foundation had already been started before I joined Dronecode, and it was funding Autopilot and PX4 back then, and I got in just, I think, a few years after it got started, and I was the program manager, and I did that for a couple of years. But when I got started at 3DR, The drone industry was in a whole different position back then. Like, I think it was a different era. And in this drone industry, I think we go through this different cycles every 1, 2, 3 years, right? We see a couple companies grow and do a lot of different things and different markets, and then we go through this slow process of reshaping the industry, finding new things to do and new goals. I think that back then, and I might be wrong, I think we were doing lots of UTMs just got started and they were beginning to be a thing. A lot of different smart drones just got released, and the importance of open source started to become more clear for players in the drone industry, where a lot of the investments they used to do in engineering, they realized they could just move to open source, just kind of like what 3R did, and benefit from that. And not only by the shared technology and shared knowledge, but also by creating a community and being able to hire from this pool of developers and train faster because there was a well-known thing. And that's how, when I got started, I think I got started in this foundation that was already laid out by Chris Anderson, Lawrence Mayer, and a lot of other really, really smart people. So when I joined, I think the biggest challenge was moving from a product team or a product-based team to an open source team where my immediate reportees, or I didn't have any immediate reportees, so nobody reported to me. It was more like reported to engineering leads in their own organizations. And I had access to a lot of developers, but not really reported to me. And it was a really tough challenge to figure out how to work with them and how to try to incentivize them to keep contributing. And I tried everything to try to make it work. But my biggest mistake was trying to adopt the corporate way of thinking that I had with me from 3DR or my marketing time in the market agencies, and that really just didn't fit well in a really modern digital, everyone is remote type of scenario.
And they're in charge of their own domain too.
Oh, for sure, yeah. And they're not even like, some of them do have a priority to work on open source, but not all of them. So they have different priorities from what I have, and it's a really tough challenge to try to convince them to contribute a little bit of what they're doing at this time, and align their roadmaps to help us or help the broader community. And sometimes it's not even the developer that you have to convince. You have to go and talk to their engineering leads. You have to go talk to executive management and have those conversations. So like I said, biggest mistake was trying to adopt the traditional way of doing things to a non-traditional group. Second mistake was not showing my face as much as I should have. And what I mean by that is not being present and like in person, like not going in and to meet the teams, not doing events like what we're doing this year. This is one of the biggest. This is why this event is so important to me, because this is where we get to meet each other. So the fact that you work with an open source community means that you get to work with a lot of nicknames and weird avatars online, and they're 90% of the time not even the real, like their face is online on those avatars. So it's like you're working with anonymous people and just trying to figure out who they are, who they work for, and just meeting them and just getting to know what their actual goals behind their contributions are. Me not knowing that caused me a lot of trouble and made my work so much harder that it shouldn't have. And right now, I think I strike the balance between trying to manage everything, because if you know me, you know that I like to control every single aspect of everything. I'm a bit of a controller freak, and I like to think a few steps ahead, and at least I think I do. And it caused a lot of stress not being able to control anything. So I had to learn to let go and trust that people were going to do the right thing. And the way I did that was by showing by example how I thought things should work. So I started contributing myself a little bit more. I started to uh, coordinate meetings. So the way this open source team works is that we have a weekly meeting on Wednesdays at 8 a.m. Pacific. Everyone's welcome to join, by the way. Those are public meetings. We have like somewhere between 10 to 20 people on average join us every week. And that's where we coordinate what we do. Like, hey, this is all the things that got contributed to maybe PX4, the Autopilot, and this week. And this is what I'm working on next week or the next few days. And sometimes it's a very short meeting. Sometimes it takes like an hour and a half. But me learning how to not control, just learning how to talk to the developers on that meeting, listen to them, that was like getting 90% of my work done because I got to learn who they were. I got to learn their objectives in contributing. I get to know what their companies wanted to do. And then I built a relationship with them with a lot of them as friends through those meetings and through just keep working with them and being in the middle of everything. So it was very scary for me at the beginning because coming from my background, well, like, hey, I studied digital graphic design. I didn't go to school for any of the things. Yeah, exactly. So I like for the first years, I was really afraid of asking the tough questions because I was afraid of the answers, to be honest. I was afraid of the answers, and learning to let go, like I said, was the best thing I could do. Just letting go of the fear.
Yeah, that's not an uncommon. Like young leaders, when they come in, sometimes they're afraid of getting things wrong. Some people never get over that, right? They actually become terrible bosses, right? Because they spend all their time managing their appearance to everybody rather than asking the right questions to get the right information so that you're able to actually lead through the knowledge you've acquired from getting it wrong, right? So just to summarize actually how we got here, because you covered a lot of things that I think were really interesting. So managing an open source community, it's not a top-down affair. If anything, it's about creating incentives and rallying points for people to actually commit their work for. And then it's also a lot about listening, acquiring all that knowledge from all these people who are working on these independent projects, and then making the community aware of that so that they're not double spending time on it, right? That's one thing that you brought up to me in a conversation years ago because we were talking about, what makes for successful drone industry. And you brought up that governance, like an absence of governance, an absence of focus means that people work towards the same goal, but they actually spent twice, 3 times, 4 times as much time because they were always starting from scratch. So that the role of basically Dronecode Foundation is to provide some governance to the overall community.
Yeah, correct. I cannot overestimate the importance of good governance. And there's bad governance, there's good governance, and there's no governance. I think having no governance is even worse than having bad governance. It just cripples you from the beginning. And like I said, like you start over and over again. And when you don't have a clear foundation of what you're trying to get to and how to polish that and make sure that you stay on track, it's the worst. Because even if you have a bad plan and you still are going somewhere, right? But maybe not the right place, but you're going somewhere. But having no governance means that at any given point, you can change focus and go anywhere. And that just takes, and you might see it like it's creating progress, but it's really not. It's just creating a lot of things and with no purpose. So that is not good. So when I started the Dronecode Foundation, I was not the GM, I was the program manager. And a lot of my work was basically serving the board of directors, which is completely true still, but I had a different goal behind my job, and I had a different, it was a different role. So I interfaced a lot with the chairman. At the time was Chris Anderson, and we created a plan of what we wanted to do throughout the year, and we executed on that, and with the board of directors. So the way governance works at Dronecode Foundation, and for a lot of different open source projects, especially those hosted within the Linux Foundation, is that we have members that contribute to open source. Those members pay a yearly fee to belong to the foundation, and that's the funding that we use to pay for all the things and services that we do, and the events and salaries and hardware that we might buy for developers. And then those companies get to elect representatives. There's different tiers of memberships, and they elect based on that. And every year we got elections, and those elected get to represent those members on the board of directors. And the board of directors helps define the budget for the year, the goals for the year, and we have quarterly meetings where we actually review the progress, and we make sure that everything is aligned where it should be, or adapt maybe. It happened a couple of times before where, you know what, the industry is changing and we're going this direction. We should probably change a few things here and there. And it helped me a lot to be in those board meetings with Chris Anderson and Dr. Lawrence Mayer. They guided me a lot into how things should work. They had a lot of previous experience working with open source. And I learned what to care for and what to really look for when making a decision. And the one thing that they keep on repeating was, make sure developers are aligned with this vision, and not like we're imposing anything. No, not all. Make sure you talk to them ahead of time, you listen to their feedback, and we adopt, because like the number one thing that we need to care for are the developers or the contributor community. Make sure that's strong, make sure it stays strong so that they can keep contributing. They feel like they're in a safe space. So that's one of the things that really stick with me. And that's one of the things that I'm trying to adopt now that I'm a GM. I get to help the board of directors take decisions on a different level and take action more on a day-to-day active role. This event, and sorry that I keep coming back to the event, but it's essentially like the celebration of everything that happens throughout the year for us. And this
I'm going to roll the video. So just talk about the event while it's going on.
Yeah, so this is footage from the
because this is an important point of governance too, right? Like you're actually like the conversations that happened here. These are happening between you and these people throughout the course of the year, or they're happening on the calls. But there's unique opportunities and spontaneity that really only pop up during the course of the event, right?
Yeah, and we were joking throughout this conference. This is the first one in the PX4 Developer Summit in Zurich. We hosted this at ETH Zurich, where actually PX4 and Pehel got created by Lawrence Mayer. So we were joking that we were seeing a lot of the avatars that we saw on GitHub every day in the face. So we get to meet, like, shake their hands, thank them in person, and it was such a great atmosphere in there. We were not expecting the amount of people that showed up. We were expecting somewhere like, I don't know, less than 100, and 200 showed up. Mike, you were there, and we had the greatest time just meeting each other, talking about technology, and just being happy. I think that after that meeting, that's when it finally hit us that what we were working on was so big and a lot of people were depending on it. It was so funny because we knew that a lot of different companies were using it. We're using our technology, but the fact that you get to meet them and listen to them and just interface with them, it made it so much more real. And I think after that event, everything changed for me, at least. It just gave me a sense of pride of being able to work with these amazing people. I don't feel like I'm leading anyone, to be honest. I feel like they're leading me because they're leading me to greatness. They are great, and everyone that I get to work with is amazing in their own specialty, and they are so focused on what they're doing, and it humbles me every time that I get to work with all of these developers and companies. So this event is great because we're expecting to see a lot of those faces again after 2 years of this rough time in the world. I don't know how to put it, but it's a good time to meet. Why? Because in the industry, the drone industry, where like I already said, it keeps changing every 2 3 years. It finally seems like we're maturing towards one single goal again and into this new era of digital transformation that is past us. Now we're more into like, okay, we got this technology. Now we're really thinking how to apply it. And now we are beyond thinking that regulation is the thing that is stopping us. I think the drone industry realized not too long ago, like it's now realizing that regulation is not what's stopping us. It's ourselves. Like it's just the way we're working with the technology, the way we are implementing that technology. You get to go and see those companies right now, like just like DroneUp, like the deal they got with Walmart. They're helping Walmart do drone delivery. Just think about that. Like 10 years ago, we were talking about doing drone delivery. In fact, one of the first drone scripts that I built, a tutorial, was delivering a burrito with a drone. It literally was a script that took a claw from a drone, grabbed a burrito, and dropped it somewhere else. Delivery.
So you're
And we were
responsible for that
thinking
meme,
about it.
or were you
Yeah,
responding
I
to a
don't know
meme?
if I'm responsible for. I think I was responding to the meme back then.
Because that was already a
But
meme. Okay.
yeah, it was already a meme. So just think about that. 10 years ago, we already knew that this was where it's going to go. But it wasn't until like today that it's happening and it's a thing. Zipline has been doing it for a few years now. They've been delivering medical supplies. And we're going to continue to see a lot of different companies do all those applications that we thought about 10 years ago. But now they finally got their act together and we're finally putting the effort where it should be. And the fact is that open source is powering a lot of those things. And the reason is that companies are no longer fighting on the features that you're expected to have out of a drone. Like takes off, it flies very stable, and has fail safes, and you can adopt and maybe install apps on your flight controller. Maybe you can change your hardware. You can have new hardware every year. And it doesn't matter because the code base is the same. And those things used to kill drone companies. Moving from one hardware platform to another used to kill drone companies like years ago. Not even years ago, it probably still is doing it. And now, if you look at what we are doing with PX4 and PXOC, we're releasing new flight controller standards, and they're using the same firmware. So that allows companies to learn how to use a platform and keep on moving
it
and
takes
adopting
away
on top of
a lot of the risk, right? So like you think about Airware, which is this historical disaster, right? And they are only one of a representative of a host of companies that try to do everything from top to bottom on their own. Sometimes would steal from open source and not get credit, right? Not contribute back. You could see a history of this. Even some of the more traditional firms in the military space would do that, right? Where now that just seems unsensible because you're not taking advantage of all this freely accessible code in the ecosystem. But then even interacting with the ecosystem itself is a learning experience that makes your proprietary stuff more robust, right? Because you get ideas from other people. There's only so many people that are working on projects like this worldwide, and if you're not sharing information with them, you're basically forced to come up with, Einsteinian level theorems all on your own. So yeah, Anyway, we're getting. I mean, the time went really fast. We're getting close to the end here. Got some rapid fire questions that I want you to answer. Try to answer them in 1 to 2 sentences. So,
All right, let's go.
all right, best and worst experience in business.
Oh, the worst experience in business was me getting into contract negotiations for a service and going in blank, not even having a plan of what I wanted to get, and they totally took advantage of me because I really didn't know what I was going in myself into. So that's the advice I can give you is just really study what you want to get out of that meeting and make sure you go for it. And the best experience I got in business, when you go to a business meeting and you basically spend the time just talking about something else because the deal is already mutually agreed upon. I think that's how the contract negotiations should go. Like everything should be agreed upon beforehand. So kind of black and white on that, both questions.
All right, so tips for people just entering the drone ecosystem, and
Ooh.
actually give a tip for somebody who's been around for a long time. What are they getting wrong? What can you make them aware of?
You can define the persona a little bit more. You're just talking about a company
Oh
like
no, it's two
someone making a
personas. So
company or
um, so somebody who's getting started in the space, starting a company, somebody who's already running a project. What are they missing out on?
challenge your assumptions. The drone industry has a lot of people selling snake oil, especially when it comes to how you should be markets or verticals within the drone industry that may not be as lucrative as they might be. Look at what others are doing and see where they're getting their funding from. And I think you would not get it wrong if you do that. I see a lot of people struggling with trying to reinvent the wheel here. So try to avoid that as much as possible.
All right, work-life balance. Do you have it? Any regrets?
Oh, this is a
Or
great topic. This is a
tips to
great topic.
your previous self, your younger self.
Well, you know what? And huge kudos to my wife, which I love. Thank you, Ohelia. She was great. She put up with so much. And I can tell you that I did not have work-life balance at all. I was one of those persons that stayed up really late working when I shouldn't really have. If I could tell something to my previous self, it's just don't worry too much. Don't try to control what you cannot control, and make sure that you enjoy your family a bit more.
And so
Oh, and
what's
go to therapy.
well, we all need some type of clinical backstop, right? Whether it's going to the doctor or the therapist. Um,
Yeah.
you'll eventually meet one of them, right? So, what's the most challenging thing about leading others?
Um, oh, this is a good question. So the most challenging thing to me is um, putting myself in a position. So when I talk to you about being very controlling about stuff, I put in like an armor, and I try to be present at everything that I'm doing. But sometimes meeting new people is a struggle for me because I need to be a bit more vulnerable and share more to gain trust and build a relationship. Um, that is really tough for me sometimes, and I am an introvert, and I struggle going out and building relationships sometimes. Once I build the relationship, I can keep it, and it's good. But just meeting someone new, and even if it's on my team, and just getting to know each other, it takes time. And sometimes I like to, like I said, control everything and go really fast, and I start skipping steps. And I have to trace back and do things again and apologize or make sure that we did things the right way. So it's a learning process. Every time I meet someone and leading them, it's even a bigger problem if I don't do that right at the beginning. So I try to start relationships as best as I can and keep improving on them. So
So,
that's
so
that's that's
lead,
what that's what I do.
yeah, lead to the actual person rather than your own personal goals.
Correct. Good summary.
And last thing, a leadership tip that you'd like to pass along.
Like I said, just listen. Listen to the people that you're working with. You cannot have all the answers, and make sure that everyone is rewarded for their contributions. I think that's the one thing that is true in open source, and it's true in any other business scenario. You have to learn how to reward the people that are doing the work and putting in the hours. Make sure you reward them, make sure you know who they are and what their goals are in life, and that you empower them to do more, because that's the way that you get happy employees and happy community members.
Well, thank you, Ramon. Thank you so much for your time. It's been a wonderful experience talking with you about life, leadership, and the drone industry. As always, I can tell you personally, I've learned a lot about how to manage my own career through our conversations together. Specifically, pulling back from being workaholics. I think we've made a lot of progress with that over the last
Yes,
2
we
years.
have.
So I appreciate your friendship on that front. So just a couple of news items. We've got Dawn of Drones tomorrow. Dawn is going to be interviewing Sean Gare. I actually think she's also doing a special broadcast after this, live from EDRC, which is the show that Sean is running. We got our Twitter Spaces next week, where we're bringing back General James Pass, who was on our first Full Tilt episode, and he'll be joining Danielle Gagne, who works for Volatus Aerospace. And then on Monday, we got Bronwyn Morgan. We've got Chris from Mission Go. They're going to be joining us on the full crew. So we've got a lot packed into this week. And for the rest of this week, I'm going to be at the PX4 Developer Summit with Ramon. So excited to go and see the community again. I haven't been in person since Zurich, and it was one of the most memorable and rewarding experiences of my life. So I'm super excited to see everybody in Austin in a few days. And yeah, that's it out here.